Hi folks, Research Warrior back again, and as always I have the information I'm about to release written in front of me. As I've stated in my previous videos, my other passion is the study and research on UFOs and its occupants, extraterrestrial aliens. I also write for an alternate magazine called Ufologist and the other one Hard Evidence. Both magazines I highly recommend because you won't read bullshit from them. Everything within these magazines is based upon research with footnote sources provided, and most importantly, they are privately owned. So we can say whatever we want as long as we can prove it. Now more so than ever before, one does not need any longer to lie in seeing a UFO and in many cases its occupants. The ones whom from heaven came and mated with the daughters of humans are merely one breed of aliens that came down. They are here waiting to expose themselves very soon. Having said this, the ones that are coming back, more than likely amongst them will be the one that created us, the Homo sapien, the father, Enki or Ea. That was his name, Enki or Ea, as an EA. They will dislodge the ones who stayed on earth after the great flood. It is these evil manipulators who are presently dumbing the world's population. They don't want us to open our eyes, and so they bombard us with pure crap. Like, quote, entertainment, which involves television, cinemas, music industries, etc. All this entertainment is merely a tool used against us. What is happening now is no longer secret. Before that was suppressed by the world controllers. Millions of people have cameras worldwide, videos, pictures of aliens and their crafts that are now in their hands of the average man and woman. What I'm going to talk about today is about an incredibly brave man called Philip Schneider, who died in 1996. Prior to his death, he had toured across America. He spoke out. In other words, he was a whistleblower, and from my perspective, in reference to or with anything to do with UFOs and aliens, he was the best. He was involved in building a secret underground base in Dulce, New Mexico for the US military. His world reality was changed when he encountered a fight with a violent ET race in the late 1970s. There are people out in the public that will say that anything to do with UFOs is crap. But what I would ask these people is, where have you been all your life? Why don't you face the truth? There's irrefutable proof of humans of not merely evolving naturally, but rather suddenly appearing, practically overnight as such, when you take into account that the Homo erectus became the Homo sapien man, and our scientists could not and did not have an answer as to how early the Homo sapien man made his appearance on Earth. In relation to the slowness of evolution, he was here way too early. The other thing I'll bring up is that Phil, when he revealed what he knew, people were saying that his stories were made up. Well, you don't die for being ridiculous. You don't die for bullshitting. You do for what you know, especially for exposing what you know. So, who was Phil Schneider? He was born on April 23rd, 1947 in a naval hospital. His father was a captain in the US Navy who worked in nuclear medicine and also helped design the first nuclear submarines. Captain Schneider was also a part of Operation Crossroads, which was responsible for testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific. So Phil came from a very well educated pedigree as such. Pardon me. He had a long-time friend who suspected that something went wrong, or was wrong, because for several days he was unsuccessful in contacting Phil, despite the fact that his car was at the front of the apartment in Wilsonville, Oregon. Seeing that his car was still there, he still could not get through. Pardon me. On the 7th of January 1996, he came along with the manager of the Autumn Park Apartments, and as well as a detective from the sheriff's office. They entered the apartment, and inside they found Phil Schneider dead. He had been dead for maybe 5 to 7 days. At first, his death was attributed to a stroke, but after a few days, things were disturbing in reference to details that began to surface. He had in fact been murdered. In a lecture videotaped in May 1996, Phil claimed his father, Oscar, was also involved with the infamous Philadelphia experiment, of which I am familiar with, as I am of Phil's disclosures. So, Philip also claimed to be an ex-governmental structural engineer who was involved in building underground military bases around the US. He also stated he was one of the only 3 people to survive that incident that took place in 1979 between the alien greys and the US military forces at the Dulce underground base. According to Phil's ex-wife, Cynthia Dre, she believed that Phil was murdered because he publicly revealed the truth about the US government's involvement with the UFOs and its occupants, the Greys. Philip was also privy to the Greada Treaty, which was signed by Eisenhower in 1954. It was whilst Philip was employed in 1979, which involved building an addition to the underground military base, that the workers accidentally came across a large artificial cavern, which was a secret base for the alien greys. It was there when a firefight started. 67 workers and also military personnel were killed. I did write an article called "A Venusian Visits the US Pentagon" for an alternate magazine, but I will not name it until I receive a reply from the magazine editor. There was a picture which Philip held up at the 1995 Preparedness Expo lecture, which he claimed showed an alien called Val Valiant Thor, the one I wrote about in the magazine. Philip also pointed out his father in the picture. His father was sitting directly behind the alleged alien. There was no actual verification that the picture Philip showed was the quote real thing. But once again, why would a person with Philip's credentials bother to make up the story with the photo as well, knowing that he could be subjected to ridicule from his fellow colleagues, which led to his death? One thing that did stand out in the alien's picture is that the alien's right hand looked unusually long. If any interested people wish to look at Valiant Thor's hand, log on to www. The following is one word, above the top secret .com/forum/thread, as in THREAD, 970-697 /PG1, no full stop. www.abovethetopsecret.com/forum/thread, as in THREAD, 970-697 /PG1, no dot. He was a super whistleblower. His life was involved in just bravery. He was a brave man. He, out of his own curiosity, he decided to see where this was going to lead him, and his conscience got, said to him straight out, "Look, mate, you have to reveal what you know, because it's important to to humanity," and he did that. Hence, what I'm saying, he is so powerful as a whistleblower and also a most courageous man. I also decided to see whether Philip Schneider knew anything about the most famous contactee on Earth, whose name Billy Mayer, who lives in Switzerland, who from the age of 5 was contacted by a race of beings very similar to us humans in appearance, but who were much, much more advanced than us. At one stage they were humans too, according to the Pleiadians. They too had their DNA cloned, probably for enslavement purposes, just like we humans had our DNA mixed with that of the ones who mated with our women. In Genesis 6 for the Old Testament you will find this. Philip knew Billy Mayer, but when I watched the video to the end, mysteriously Philip's video was cut short before he could open up about Billy Mayer. However, yes, he did know of Billy Mayer. There is a woman named Dana Razinova, who was born in Prague, the Czech Republic in 1980. She has been interested in extraterrestrial civilization since 1997. She was a member of a local Czech ufological group and a member of the FIGU Swiss group, FUGU. Correction, FIGU. Or should I say she was a former member. Now, there is a FIGU website, and it's titled FIGU/website. It will open up many topics that are related to Billy Meier, also terrestrials, including documentations, interviews, presentations, etc., etc. While Rosanova accepts the validity of Meier's claim of extraterrestrial contacts, she finds, quote, numerous inconsistencies and came to the conclusion that the Pleiadians are also known as the Pleiadians, are, quote, deliberate liars. They don't tell the truth. She goes on to say that they have a very deceptive agenda, filled with distortions and outright lies. Apparently, there was a rare statement by Billy Meier's oldest son, and though Billy's contact was true and not a hoax, what was to make people question the intentions of the Pleiadians or the Pleiadians was supposedly due to the fact that the Pleiadians were once again supposedly prone to change in statements. Really? Well, first of all, the means of communications and reaching a point of understanding one another was vital. There was no denying the fact that Billy Meier had provided a number of proofs of various objects such as photographs, beam ship video footages, and also metallic samples, not to mention dozens of eyewitnesses and also biological samples. These added proof of Billy's contacts simply due to the fact that today in our present year, added proof, right, millions of people have filmed and also photographed aliens, which enforces his statement that he is the real thing. What must be taken into account when trying to verify, which cannot be done, is that the Pleiadians are liars. I find it hard to believe that so-called ufologists, quote, experts, are debunking the Pleiadians when in fact there are also other aliens who have abducted and in various instances experimented on humans. But the Pleiadians are being singled out. There are some humans who have been taken on rides in UFO ships. There are contactees who freely talk about their encounters and their dealings on UFOs and its occupants. There are others who maintain silence. Some cash in on their claims by writing books and in some cases having films made about them or about their contact. There are also many individuals who have maintained telepathic contact. I will now tell my story, and I've always told people who wish to listen, so now I'll tell it to you people, about my contact that I had whilst working on a high building in Adelaide, South Australia. However, I will first go back to the time when I was 13, whilst boarding in a double-storey building in South Melbourne, Australia, Victoria. I jumped into bed, and directly in front of me, at the foot of the bed, was a wardrobe with mirrors in front of it, from top to bottom. And I saw a perfectly pure white light in circumference. It was, in other words, a circle, pure white circle. The window was to the right of me, which directly pointed to the cabinet I was looking at, the wardrobe, correction. I got out of bed and walked over to the window, and there it was, a pure white circular light. I looked down, and the telegraph poles were below the light. I was not frightened at all. The light would probably have been some 20-30 feet in front of me. I kept looking at it and looking down. There was no explanation whatsoever for the light being there. I got back into bed, still viewing the light at the foot of the bed until I fell asleep. In South Australia, I actually made contact with someone. When I had my lunch break, I went up to the top of the building and sat over the edge took my lunch out, started looking down at the people below, and also looked up at the sky. It was a perfect day. I didn't notice it, but a man walked up to me. He didn't give me his name and started a conversation. He was around about 5'9", 10 feet tall. He looked clean, had long hair and a beard. He asked me, "Do you believe in aliens?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes, I do." And then we talked on for about another 10 minutes or so. Then I got up to make my way down to work. He stopped in front of me and said, "I'll ask you a question, and you won't be able to answer it." I still to this day cannot recall what the question was, but what shocked me, absolutely stunned me, was when he finished saying his question, his pupils went from being round to being straight up and down. They were cat-like eyes. I looked down in disbelief, shaking my head, and when I looked up, he was gone. So I assumed I must have been looking down for some few seconds or so, and what happened? I made my way down to where I was working and put on my steam cleaning backpack, because we were steam cleaning the buildings, outside the buildings. I was still in shock when my boss came around the corner of the building and said, "George, what's the matter with you? You look as if you've seen a ghost." Who else was up here with us? His reply was, "No one." And to this day, I've never forgotten what that person looked like, and never will. So yes, I do believe in UFOs and aliens. I actually write articles, as I stated earlier, for the magazines Ufologist and Hard Evidence. I also had a radio program, a 1-hour session on the Tuesday on Radio Casey 97.7 FM, which is a community radio station that is situated in Casey, Cranbourne, Victoria, Australia. I also contacted Dr. Stephen M. Greer's people after I'd read his bestseller called Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, which I highly recommend, and received written permission to talk about his work as long as he is acknowledged, and all credit goes to him. For those who don't know Dr. Stephen Greer, he is the founder of the Disclosure Project. His address is Disclosure Project, P.O. Box 265, Crozet, Crozet, VA 22920. That's Disclosure Project, Post Office Box 265, Crozet, VA 22920, or www.seti.org. He is the foremost expert on UFO contacts, also anything to do with extraterrestrials. So it was not only Billy Mayer who presented hard evidence of his contact with extraterrestrial civilization. Jordan Adamski was a contactee with Venusians, that's right, beings from Venus. He went on to submit film footages of flying saucers as well as starships with photographs. He also put forth 6 witnesses who supported the reality of his contact under sworn affidavits of his contact. So as well, he also had a piece of the flying saucer. There's also James Gilliland. He too submitted UFO footage. And there are many witnesses who routinely watch UFOs over his ranch in Washington, USA. Another contactee was Daniel Fry, who also submitted starship photographs and also physical evidence, one being a circular disc 8 centimeter in circumference. There are people that have commented that the Pleiadians or the Pleiadians are purposefully taking the limelight as such away from other ETs. So despite being a much more advanced civilization than ours, they still have one of the old human traits: jealousy. You would think that the Pleiadians had over the centuries gotten over that very infantile stage of evolution, wouldn't you? Well, let's go into the rabbit hole, shall we? I love that saying. The rabbit hole. Anything can crop up. But in order for it to happen, you must leave the 5 senses behind. touch, taste, sense, sight and smell. What better place than to go to the department or the development, correction, of human life in the womb, that at the time of fertilization everything about will be determined, everything about you will be determined, how tall you will be, colour of your eyes, skin, etc., until the day you enter the world. And to think that starting off no bigger than a pinhead, that you grow into a totally different being, where you are hundreds of thousands of times bigger than that pinhead, thousands of tons heavier, only to find out that you are not alone. You have entered a school of learning. You find out that there are two different yous, male and female. The instant you came into the world, you forget the moment you came into the world at the same time. But what took place in the womb is worlds away from where you are now. And even though you were intelligent, without even knowing, now is another journey awaiting you. Guess what? You have to start all over again, just in order to survive. Luckily for you, you have in most cases your parents to guide you. When you think how much more intelligent and also thousands of years more advanced are our cosmic brothers and sisters, then for just a moment stop and think, how much more advanced are we Homo sapien man compared to the Neanderthal man, ancient Stone Age man? There was also someone to guide us mortals to the light that we must have seen racing while racing into the mother's womb. Well, let's bring ourselves out of the rabbit hole, and now we are here on Earth again. The mother of our mother is Gaia. There are now some 7 billion of us. All these little pinheads that turned out into massive monsters, the human race. We are rich, poor, fat, skinny, white, black, red and yellow in colour. The only thing that reminds each and every one of us, that we are related is the umbilical cord, belly button. And sadly, when our coat, as in skin, is pierced with any sharp objects, we bleed red. Our Earth was believed to be the centre of the universe simply because of the visible planets. But when you realise that our solar system expands into a interstellar neighbourhood, which becomes the Milky Way galaxy, which is related as such to a local galactic group, an expanded neighbourhood, which continues to get bigger and bigger, whilst we, even our Earth, is no longer visible, and we humans are not even anything minutely connected to that pinhead in our mother's wombs, which started this journey into what we perceive as reality. Or is it much, much more than that? The ones that we humans can look upon as our older, infinitely older, more advanced humans, if I can use that term, is because of the birth well before the quote, 6 days of creation. For us humans hold the answers to our path to higher correction consciousness. And yes, there are both good and evil terrestrials who have their own eggs incubating throughout their galaxies. Just like other worlds, these galaxies have their own cosmic rules. We humans are still too busy being ungrateful little brats, fighting amongst ourselves, and until the time to stop the scrap is near, which from my perspective it is near, we will not be accepted into the Galactic Federation of Light. There have been clues left in each civilization, actually thousands of generations worldwide, that we are also galactic beings. In other words, we are star children, also apart from being humans as well. Our schools and churches have lied to us since our birth into awareness of understanding the I am concept to a degree. And whilst most of the controlling extraterrestrials are malevolent, we have received help from the quote, jealous ones, the benevolent Pleiadians, who are trying to help Enki the genetic father of the Homo sapien man, to undo what was indoctrinated via the mixing of our DNA with that of the Anunnaki DNA. When Anunnaki, got it, God was sacrificed and mixed with the clay from the four corners of the world, named Adam, being the first four letters of the Greek alphabet in reference to the name Adam, as in A, Anatolia, D, Dissus, A, Acton, and M, Mensembria. That's something to think about. And from my perspective, as long as we keep educating ourselves, as long as we open up our eyes to say that this world as we know it is far, far more complex than what we think it is. And the ones that are controlling us, well, their time is coming to an end. And I would say that in 2016, 2017, it could be so close now to their presence being exposed, and we will not have to put up with any more bullshit from lying backsides that are politicians and religionists that have manipulated man and just completely lied about everything. Okay, until next time, stay safe, folks.